It's week 4 of social media analytics, and I'm here to give you a quick overview of what we're going to cover this week. This week in the video lecture, we're going to talk about word of mouth. We're going to think about what is it? Intuitively, it's people talking to each other about products that may impact future choices in terms of consumption, demand. Then we're going to think about, can we quantify the effect of word of mouth on products? We're going to think about this across 2 dimensions. One, volume, so just the amount of conversation, particularly online word of mouth, in terms of the amount of posts about a product, potentially. And we'll also think about sentiment, so how positive or negative that discussion is. We're going to think about how credible the estimates are. So are they really big or are they really small? Should they be really big? Should they be really small? We kind of think about those kind of trade-offs, like, if I see really big effects, do I believe them? What might be a good comparison? Is advertising a good comparison? So should my word of mouth effects look like similar in magnitude to the effects of advertising? We'll also think about whether these effects might differ across different kinds of products. Outside of the video lecture, we're going to have the computing lecture this week. In the computing lecture, we're going to pick up from where we started last week, or where we left off last week, sorry, which was thinking about difference and differences and using it and doing it in R. So we're going to think about how to compute difference and difference estimates. 2 ways. One, I'm going to call manually. So if you recall back to week 2's computing lecture, we compute this table of treated and control group before and after, and we compute the means of those 4 combinations. So what's the average outcome variable for the control group in the before period, before the treatment takes place, and the after period, similar for the treated group. Then we take differences twice to compute that difference in differences effect. We'll do that in R. It's going to be useful for the group assignment. We'll also think about how to do that via regression, so how to estimate difference in differences via regression. Along the way, we're also going to think about standard errors again. So if you recall last week, we went from kind of homoskedastic standard errors to heteroskedastic standard errors. And then today, or not today, but in the computer lecture, we might think about a further generalization called clustered standard errors. So we think about what are clustered standard errors and how we might be able to implement those in R. All of these things are going to be really useful for the first group assignment. They're going to help you kind of work through the computational aspects of that assignment. Then there's the weekly lab to kind of work through material. So the lab assignment, things to be working on this week. The topic lines up to the computer lecture, so it's doing difference and differences. The example that we're going to work through here, or you're going to work through on your own there, is going to be an example of search engine marketing. So that's those kind of sponsored listings at the top of a Google search, for example, trying to figure out, are they actually effective? So we're going to, again, do different differences manually, do it via regression, probably think about clustering standard errors and adjusting them accordingly. And it's really going to be a hands-on R session, tidying data, plotting data, regressing data, summarizing output, and interpreting results. Again, super useful for the group assignment, kind of plugs into the main effects there. One thing to kind of think about potentially is that the assignment, so not the assignment, the lab this week, this search engine marketing and its impact on revenue at eBay, is based on a very, very famous paper about trying to understand advertising effects in online markets. And it was quite influential at the time, and it still is. So the main point of the paper, to kind of show you where you might be going with the assignment, is that it suggests that search engine marketing is not effective and has negative return on investment. So you shouldn't be doing it. And this kind of view that online advertising or search engine advertising is ineffective it kind of prevails a little bit today in industry as well. It definitely prevails among econ focused people in academia, for right or for wrong. So you're going to be working through something that had a really large impact on the way we think about advertising in online markets. In the lab section, it's going to be the usual two things: the marketing analytics and the wild idea. Here's a problem, work in a group, come up with a solution. Again, looking back, last week was about online reputation. So this lab sections exercise will be about online reputation. And it's about, the applied example is thinking about bol.com and them trying to expand the number of third-party sellers, but worrying that new third-party sellers don't have a lot of online reputation, and how they might be able to mitigate that problem, and then how you'd be able to, implement a test to see if the solution proposed is effective. In addition to that marketing analytics and the wild task, we discussed last week's lab assignment and any questions that you might have of that. Solutions should be available to that online as well, so you can kind of look at the solutions, go into the class and be like, hey, I don't get this bit or I don't get that bit, and you guys can talk about that. Last things you should be working on. You should be working on group assignment 1, because it's due in a couple of weeks. I see a lot of you have cloned the repository on GitHub, so you can start working on it. And another thing you should be thinking about, although it's a few weeks away, is exam revision. Why do I say this now? Because it's never too early to start exam revision, or at least have a strategy about how you're going to revise for the exam. Keep thinking about that and coming up with a strategy, because exams come fast in these 7 to 8 week blocks. With all of that said, we'll see you in the next video.